Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Hill Country. I'm June Hartley and I will be your service associate today. We have a special welcome for any visitors that we have. You are welcome and we are glad to see you. Let's begin with announcements. If you have any, wave your hand and Justin will unmute you.
Oh, Mari, 1 second. Let me get you up there. Go ahead.
Yeah, just like to say that I saw in the paper the other day that the Doyle Center is having a Cinco de Mayo celebration on Wednesday from 2 to 6. And since we have some people are working hard in the plots there, the garden, the Glory Garden, it would be really nice to have some people out for that. I'd love to go, and if the weather's good, I'll be there. So just think about it. I know it's not really directly church connected, but it's a bit.
And I've got something, Justin.
Yes, go ahead.
It's not church connected, but it's humanity connected. And most of you may know this, but the First Methodist Church is having a walk-in coronavirus vaccine injections from Monday through Friday from 8 until 5, and you don't need an appointment, just walk in. So if you know anybody that is still hesitant or complains because they can't get an appointment, this is their chance. Thank you. Okay.
We don't have our chalice up this morning.
I've got one.
Oh, okay. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Excuse me. Each morning, we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive, to carry, and give back. Okay. Is it visible? Yeah. Okay.
Sitting in Buddhism.
Please join me in the affirmation, which Justin will put on the screen as we speak in unison. The doctrine of this church is love. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is prayer. And this is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity and fellowship, as we strive to have all souls grow into harmony with the divine. Thank you. And now the mission statement.
She skipped ahead.
We journey together, guided by new values, to seek, nurture, and serve our loving church family, our community, and our world. Thank you. I invite you to drop your offering at the church at 9, or mail it to the church at 960 Barnett, 78028. The expenses go on. Okay. The second readings begin with Albert Schweitzer, who says, "I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know, the only ones among you who will really be happy are those who have sought and found out how to serve." Mahatma Gandhi says, "Service which is rendered without joy helps neither the servant or the served. But all other pleasures and possessions pale into nothingness before service which is rendered in a spirit of joy." And lastly, from John Bunyan, you have not lived today until you've done something for someone who can never repay you. Okay. When it was announced years ago that Karen and Mike Burkett were beginning to work on bringing a transportation system to Kerrville, I wished them well, but could not believe that it would happen. But they planted a seed in our small church that has spread and flourished. I'm so happy that I was wrong. Today, we will hear about the past, present, and future of Kerr Konnect from Mike and Karen, the drivers, the office staff, and clients of the organization. Please go ahead.
Good morning. The mission of the Kerr Konnect transit system is to connect the Kerrville area community by providing safe and reliable transportation that will help maintain independence and enhance quality of life for our residents. Our vision is of a citizenry that is confident in an available means of transportation to destinations they wish to reach in order to live productive, healthy, and happy lives. The purpose of the Kerr Konnect transit system is to provide a transportation option in Kerrville and Kerr County that will be both affordable and reliable. Our goals include assisting more senior citizens and others who are transportation disadvantaged. One, to remain physically active longer and to stay connected with their social and religious communities. Two, to access needed social services, medical services, and educational services. And three, to obtain groceries and other necessities by providing citizens transport to and from these destinations. Well, I'm going to start with how did we arrive at these positions? And we're going to start in 2015 at Unitarian Universalist Church of the Hill Country. The adult religious education program presented a speaker series. It was a series of nonprofit organizations telling us about their services, how they overlap, and how there are sometimes some gaps. Our come away message from hearing those presentations was the fact that they all told us that their greatest difficulty was transportation for their clients to be able to get to them for their services. We found that a bit difficult to believe in a town like Kerrville, but it made us start asking questions. We started asking questions all around town. We started gathering data from the courthouse, from churches, from organizations, from the interagency nonprofit groups. We, at one point, were then able to put some articles in the newspaper telling the community what we were learning and what we were thinking about doing in Kerrville. And some people from the community began to attend our meetings with us. Most notably were representatives from BCFS and from the Dietert Center. They were going to be very valuable to us. The next step for us was to move to a bit larger group of people. We decided we wanted to invite some folks directly related to the needs for transportation. So we created what we call the Transportation Council, and it included representatives from BCFS and Diedert Center, Peterson Hospital, First Presbyterian Church, our church, the Doyle community, the city of Kerrville and the county of Kerr, Family Endeavors and the Homeless Coalition, MHDD, and the recovery community. This group of people were the most productive, probably the hardest working group that we had in our creation. They defined the perimeters of what Kerr Konnect would become. They presented a community forum at Diedert with short surveys on needs assessments, basically. We followed that with larger surveys to the entire community. We took them to every organization we could think of that we could imagine were experiencing transportation difficulties, including the university, churches, nonprofits, and so forth. From that, we had a pretty clear needs assessment. We knew that we were on the right track. This group then set out to create the mission statement that you heard, the vision, and the purpose statement that you heard. They also created identified some short and long-term goals for Kerr Konnect. They created the name Kerr Konnect and the logo. And they answered the ticky-tacky questions of who, what, how, when, and where. When those tasks were completed, there was a definite feeling that we needed to take another step. And the next step was what I call looking in the face of reality. We needed to create a board. We invited the people from the council to continue with us, although our board in the beginning was 3 people. Bob Ogle from Diedert Center. He was with us virtually from day one and still is with us. Bob Ogle and Mike and me, we were the board. Pretty quickly though, we were presented with another board member because our county commissioner recommended the gentleman who had run against him in the previous election. And he has turned out to be a valuable board member. That's Clayson Lambert. His business experience and experience with other nonprofits has been very valuable to us. He helped set up Heart to Heart with Lorraine, and he helped to set up the dogs for service dogs for veterans. The board then set to work. The first thing we did was become incorporated with the state of Texas as a nonprofit. And we applied for the 501c3 status, tax status with the federal government. While we waited for the federal government, we started creating our bylaws, our policies, and our procedures. Finally, in February of 2018, we received our 501c3. Then we were able to go out for funding. We began our search for funding. The Community Foundation of the Hill Country provided us with our startup funds, including a challenge grant that we met very successfully and early. And a great deal of thanks for that success goes to the generous donations of UU Church of the Hill Country and the UU Fellowship. We also approached the city of Kerrville and Peterson Health for support with our funding. And the ultimate outcome of that is the creation of a triad of support, the city, the hospital, and the Callow Foundation. And their support helps with our basic yearly budget. And the other source of funding has been an annual fundraising campaign in our community. Well, the rest of the story, I would call it, is what you would probably call the beginning of the story. October 15th, 2018, Kerr Konnect opened their doors and the wheels started turning. Again, we owe a lot to Dieter Center, because over half of our original volunteers were also, still are also, Meals on Wheels drivers. And also we owe a great gratitude to First United Methodist Church, or Light on the Hill, for offering us a generous contract on our office space, which is at Methodist Encampment, or Light on the Hill. Our goal for that first year after we opened the doors was to reach a membership of 100. October 15th, 2018, we started with 17 drivers and 30 members. January of 2019, we reached 100 members. So we were ahead of ourselves, and we've kind of been working on that ever since. And also in 2019, most significantly, we were able to hire a part-time program director and a part-time coordinator of volunteers. That, as you can imagine, has given us stability and good groundwork. I'm going to name now our Unitarian Universalist volunteers. Many of them, I think, are with us today. Office volunteers that are Unitarian Universalists are Linda Smith and Sherry Curry. And then drivers include Laurie Pazay, Steve Gallen, Gary Payne, Carolyn Dreyer, June Hartley, and Mike and I also drive. So that takes us from 2015 to 2019, and I'm going to give 2020 to Mike.
2020 did a lot to all of us. Karen mentioned that we had hired the volunteer coordinator, and we hired her in late December of 2019 with the beginning date of January 1st. And her number one priority item that we told her when we hired her was, sick 'em, go out there and get us drivers. Because as Karen said, we had been overwhelmed for over a year with people who wanted rides, and we just didn't have the driver capacity. So that was her assignment. So we welcomed in the year 2020 with some optimism, because we had her in place, but also with some trepidation, because the response and the demand for the services just continued. And we were really concerned what we could do about meeting that volume. We had started what we call the wait list, which is what I'd referred to before, which is people who needed the rides, but we couldn't serve them yet. So we put them on a wait list. The wait list was growing faster than we could take people off of it. But the demand was still there, and we were giving serious thought about having 2 volunteers in the office at once, because the phone volume was really going up. Then our ride volume was just rocking and rolling. We were hitting basically 60 trips a week and building, and we actually hit 80 trips in the first week of March of 2020. So we were really, really looking forward and planning and getting ready for an even bigger push. And then guess what? We had COVID. Well, brides crashed. The last week, I told you, the first week in March, we had 80 trips in 1 week. The last week in March, we had 12. A lot of our drivers shied away, understandably, because they were nervous about having people in the cars with them. We didn't blame them, and it made sense to us. And then there was our poor volunteer coordinator, whose possible pool of new drivers just absolutely dried up. She didn't know what to do, and but she kept trying. But anyway, COVID hit us, and one of the first questions we had to answer was, do we keep going? Like I said, the rides had crashed. So we answered the question first by saying, does there continue to be a need? And we answered that pretty quickly and said, yeah, there's a need for the transportation to continue. And then we had to decide, were we at that time lawful? Because early on, again, it was only essential services that were supposed to be operating. Well, we checked with Austin, and we were advised that we were providing essential services. So then we said, all right, if we're going to do this, we need to do it as safely as possible. So we bought sanitizing supplies before they dried up, and also put in place a mask mandate for both drivers and passengers. We distributed the sanitizing supplies to our drivers as they asked for them and needed them. Gave them instructions on spraying down their cars and all that stuff to try to stay safe. And as a side note, since that time, we have not had a single report of one of our riders becoming infected because of anything they thought happened with Kerr Konnect. So we're kind of proud of that. But the ride volume still stayed way down, less than half of what we had. Even though we had a reduced driver pool, we still had drivers and that could handle what we had. So we looked around and we said, what else can we do? Well, at about that same time, we had begun working with an outfit called Hope for Health, which is based in the Doyle community. And that was an organization put together to kind of give an uplift to the Doyle community through providing health care, health services, food distribution, and a lot of other stuff. And one of the things they thought the community needed was transportation. They wanted to use their own driver, but they weren't sure what to do. So we talked to them a lot, gave them consultation and advice, and eventually took on the duties of coordinating their drives. We added an extra phone line to our line so we would know when a Doyle community ride came in. We had to do some stuff to our ride software to provide for that. But anyway, we started providing those services to them. And it continued until about right now. Unfortunately, it wasn't working for them. So they have kind of pulled back in on the transportation aspect of that program, and we are not doing that now. But we wish them well. We think there's still a need for that. Another thing we did was get with the Methodists. Their mustard seed program, which is food distribution program, increased because, as you well know, the need for food increased. We talked with them, and they had a lot of people in need of food, but couldn't get there. The mustard seeds located at Light on the Hill as well. So we started booking rides and picking up the food and delivering it for folks in need that could not get to Light on the Hill. And that went on for some time. That program also backed off somewhat, and we're not doing that actively right now. A third thing we did was say, well, what can we do for our own membership? And as I told you, we had this wait list. HEB and Walmart had started their food delivery programs, and we thought we could help with that. So we let all of our membership know, including the people that were on the wait list and weren't eligible for rides yet, but we let them all know that we would pick up food and deliver it to them once they ordered it online. And that's continuing. We're still doing that. And finally, the last thing, we took a fling at something we just kind of thought up, and that was voting. As you remember, there was an election of some interest in 2020, and we thought it might help if people could get to the polls. So we came up with an arbitrary day and designated that as early voting day, did publicity as best we could, talked to drivers, and set aside that day to take anyone in Kerr County to go vote. We also recruited some drivers from outside Kerr Konnect that volunteered to do that kind of work too. The response was tepid at best, but it's still something that we did, and we think we're going to try again. But all of those illustrate things that we kept trying to do as Kerr Konnect during COVID to serve the community in one fashion or another. So where are we right now? Well, again, the rides are picking up. They're getting heavier this coming week, as a matter of fact. We're going to be we're going to be taking 60 trips from Monday through Friday. That's the most we've given since March of 2019. So the demand is picking up, and we're excited about that. Georgiana, our volunteer coordinator, is now finding people who are willing to come on board. So we're starting to get some new drivers, which means we can also take more people off the wait list, and we're excited about that. Right now, we've got about 58 volunteers, drivers, about 41 are active. Some of these drivers are folks who leave and don't come back, or gone during the summer months and don't come back till late fall. Others are still a little bit nervous about COVID, but we have 41 active and 2 or 3 in the wings waiting to be trained. We have 9 office volunteers, counting Karen and me, and the 2, Sherry and Linda. We are actually looking for more volunteers now for the office, as well as drivers. We need help in the office. We've got 154 clients. We have 10 in progress waiting to do their paperwork to become full members. But we still have about 115 people on the wait list that we're still trying to figure out what to do. And the what to do is getting new drivers, getting new office workers. So that kind of brings you up to date with where we are. But what you really need to do is hear from the real heroes. And that's where we're going to go next. We're going to start, I think, with Carolyn, who's going to give us a perspective from a driver's standpoint, and we'll get some other drivers. Go ahead, June.
Or Carolyn.
Or Carol.
Decades ago, when I retired, I became a professional volunteer, and I have done all kinds of things. And I must say that Kerr Konnect is one of the most rewarding volunteer activities I've ever done. I have a need to try and help make a difference. And, you know, it's one thing to send a check to a faraway charity, however worthy, but it's quite another to serve people who need your help. A hands-on, you know, daily basis. The rewards, it's easy, it's flexible, and the rewards are enormous. And one of the great rewards is the people that I've met among our riders. Of course, I get homemade cookies and little inspirational rocks too. But just meeting some of these people, there was one woman who taught tap dancing for 30 years and was also the president of the National Wool Growers Association. There was a little woman who for 40 years worked twice a week at the Peterson Hospital gift shop. And she had her little pink coat with all these little medals on it and stuff. She was just great. And these people are like 80, you know, or over. And there was another woman who was a racehorse trainer in Pennsylvania for years. There was a guy who grew up in Panama whose dad worked on the Panama Canal. I drive somebody now who's in her 70s, is a dog groomer, loves dog grooming. And I pulled up in front of her house. I hadn't been there for a while, and there's this brand new, beautiful screened-in porch. And I said, wow, that's great. She said, yeah, I did it myself. And she said, two of my husbands were carpenters. She said, I learned how to do this. And they're so inspirational. And so aside from everything else, it's just, I'm not sure. It's like when you rescue an animal, who's rescuing who? Truly, Kerr Konnect is one of the few threads that are keeping me here these days. It's wonderful. And I proselytize all the time. I carry brochures in my purse. I handed out 2 yesterday at market days at the Egg Barn. And I even have applications in my car for volunteers. So join us. It's just great. That's it. And it's certainly.
Sorry, I cut you off right as you were starting to say something, Carolyn. Hit the unmute again. Sorry, Carolyn, I accidentally cut you off.
Again, I said it certainly serves one of our primary goals, as you use, to serve humanity and fellowship. It's a great way to do that. I'm done.
All right, we're very honored today to have a couple of our other drivers with us, which is Danny and Tom Brady. We've asked them to speak to you a little bit as well, and we're just pleased as we can be that they agreed. So let us hear from you, Tom and Danny.
Okay, can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay. I thought I'd give you all a little bit of a background about us. To start with, I'm a San Antonio native, born and raised, and I worked with the state, mainly with the Child Support Division, for 38 years before retiring. My husband worked for CPA companies, and his last job was for a company out of Switzerland, which afforded us the ability to do some travel along with his job. Anyway, I inherited my mother's home in Guadalupe Heights in 2001. And when we both retired, we decided to move to Kerrville, and that was 2012. And we immediately started volunteering. First, it was Meals on Wheels, and then the library, and then the hospital. And then, let's see, I did the I was in reception and was the gift shop manager for the hospital. And then we joined Kerr Konnect in 2018. And as Carolyn said, it's very rewarding. Right now, though, at one time, I even volunteered as a dancer with a dance troupe, Afro-Caribbean dancing, for 26 years. So, I mean, I'm done a lot of volunteering. My Tom volunteers for San Antonio Amputee Foundation. He's a founding board member.
Yes.
And he served as the secretary, treasurer, I'm sorry, for the hospital.
Volunteers.
Right.
Yeah.
And right now, the only thing I'm working on is Books for Babies project. I'm in charge of that for the Friends of the Library. And Kerr Konnect and Meals on Wheels. We've never stopped Meals on Wheels because we find that to be quite a rewarding place also. Anyway, we were among the first set of drivers. And at one time, because the demand was so large and there weren't so many drivers, I think my record was 8 rides in a week. But most of the time I did 5 to 7 until finally COVID kind of slowed everything down and I got used to not driving quite so much. But I love it because I feel like it's a real contribution. I mean, a meaningful contribution to my community. That I meet some very interesting people. And it's also helping me get familiar with Kerr County and all the streets and everything. I'm finding areas I never would have gone into or I didn't even know existed. But mainly it's the people. Like an example, there's Frances who studied watercoloring at Dieterd, and she helped me. We did this. She helped me put labels on little booklets that we give out to newborn babies that tells their parents how to read to them. Anyway, she labeled all those for me. So we did kind of an exchange. Then there's, let's see, an ex-ambassador from Central America. He's quite a character. There's an ex-nun from South Africa. There's a fellow spiritual traveler with musical talent and has a very interesting past. I think she was a cook at a abbey. And a blind competitive dancer. And then there was the 100-year-old piano player. So there's just been some very, very interesting people in the community. And the most interesting, the most unusual ride I remember having was what Mike was talking about. We used to make grocery deliveries. And I went to go pick up the delivery and they had no record of it. Okay, so then they sent me to the other HEB and I got there and they had no record of it. And so it turns out that it had actually been delivered. They put it on the delivery truck to be delivered. And it was just a mix up altogether. But that one was kind of interesting, traveling all over the place trying to find the missing groceries. But anyway, the main thing is I really believe in the program. We have never stopped providing rides. We'll spray down the car and we wear our masks and we have them sit in the back so that there's some spacing. So everybody feels more comfortable. That we've really, really enjoyed it and feel like it's a very, very worthwhile program. And as long as I can drive, I'm going to do it. So then I think Tom had a few words he wants to say.
Well, basically, I don't say too much, but I did want to commend Mike and Karen for starting this program. It's a blessing that we can have something like this in the city of Kerrville.
Needed.
Providing rides, it's been needed all along, and to have somebody to come forward, do the work, do the research, and get the program going and keep it sustained. I think they should be well commended on doing that.
They're making a difference.
Yes, they are making a difference in our city and county. Basically, I've had I guess when we first started, the office people are jumping through hoops once in a while. One ride that I remember, it was raining real hard. They had to call up, and a lady had a flat tire, and she couldn't deliver the person over to her appointment. So I took the ride, jumped over, and went over to the Tivy Stadium, picked up the lady, and got her over to her appointment. And thank God the lady had somebody come by and get her flat tire fixed for her. Another person, he was a rock band star out in California in the 60s and 70s. So he had some nice stories to tell about all the girls that were around him all the time.
The groupies.
And another one, like I said, gives you snacks. She said that people were complaining, I guess, to her that, listen, my wife is saying you need to give me healthy snacks instead of all these candies. So she started giving healthy snacks to us now.
She feels like she really wants to do something. She appreciates the rides so much. And although we've told her it's not necessary, it's also, she goes to so much trouble to do it. It's, I think it makes her feel better. So,
and
can't turn it down.
Yeah. And basically, this is one of the experiences that's rewarding in your life. Helping people, I think that's one of my purposes in life, is to help people. And this is one way to do it.
And we could talk on and on, but I think that's it. We've done our share.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you so much. We just realized, by the way, that we failed to mention one other person in the church, and that's Julie Sintel. She has, within the last 2 or 3 months, become a driver and jumped right in and is getting after it.
She's one of our most recent newcomers, and we're so proud.
All right. Thought you might want to hear from an office worker or volunteer. It's really what they are. And so we've asked Sherry Curry to talk to you a little bit and give her the benefit of her thoughts and experiences.
Well, I had known Mike and Karen through church and also yoga groups. And so I'd kind of been following their efforts at trying to provide reliable transportation, and reliable seems to be the word. We did have the Art to Heart van, or the Art van, and it wasn't really reliable. People really couldn't be dependent on to be picked up at the time, and it was good, but it wasn't good enough. So I had kind of watched their process and reading the paper and hearing all their processes they were going through, and I went, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but they persevered. And so when they said they got it up and going, I said, well, I will volunteer after the first of the year, give it a few months to see if it really worked. And so after the first of the year, I guess it was in 2019, I signed up as an office volunteer. At that time, we really didn't have any training. It was kind of by the seat of your pants. They put you in front of this computer with this wonderful program, and you go, okay, that works for me, because I've always done computer stuff and enjoyed it. But I do think that the reliability is the key word in this process of providing transportation. Even though that we don't get to meet a lot of the people that we talk to on the phone, it's nice to see faces like Danny and Tom, and they are some of the best volunteers. You can call them when you're really in a bind, and they will always come through. So the drivers have been more than, a big piece of this, and their attitudes with the older people. I will just give one little story. This week I had a call from a lady, name's Virginia, and she sounded very short of breath. And she said, I need to make an appointment. And I said, okay, Virginia, when would you like to make that appointment? You know what, I forgot. And so I said, okay. She said, but I can look it up and I'll call you back. She said, but the reason I forgot is these two ladies came and talked to me about trying to move me into the assisted living or independent living at Brookdale or Juniper or whatever it is now. And she said, I was really polite with them and listened to them for an hour and a half.
Oh my
But
God.
it kind of flustered me. So I will call you back. And so she looked up her appointment date, called me back, and she goes, okay, here it is. But she said, about those two ladies, I told them I'm almost 104 and I've lived in my house. I'm doing just fine. Taking them back 100 and almost 104. And she was, right. Her mind was bright, talk was bright. She had a little respiratory system going on, but she was happy to be with her house, and she was polite enough to give them time. One other story that I had was Steve Gallen, that was the driver from Centerpoint, took a ride one time from somebody else near there. And the guy that he took, named Joe, was legally blind. He was legally blind. And so Steve, because he lived out there too, took him many places. But one day coming to the place, he picked up Joe, and Joe said, well, I need to have my chainsaw blade sharpened. And Steve went, really? And he can't see the cane, white cane. And he said, I took him, I didn't ask, but I took him, got his chainsaw sharpened, and came back. And one more story about Steve. Steve also had a lady out there that he would drive occasionally. And this one lady told him that she was from France and was a dancer over in France. And Steve said, well, you like entertaining, huh? And she said, yeah, I really do. And he goes, well, my wife is in a play right now out of the Point. And she said, really? Would you take me? And so he had a date with her, and he took her as just as a date to see his wife perform in the play. And that was such a wonderful experience for all of us to hear about, because she still does right, I guess. Anyway, I do enjoy the work. I think that we are providing a good service. I think one of the things that I really love is talking with the people, even though I don't see their face. And then the drivers are so accommodating, just so accommodating. I mean, when you get in a bind in the office, and many times we get in a bind looking for a last minute ride, and the drivers always come through. So I really appreciate it. And I appreciate that we are able to have the reliable transportation in Kerrville now. Again, I wish we did have more office volunteers. As a volunteer, you start to feel guilty if you have to take off. And it puts pressure on the other people that have to pick up for you. So I guess one of our goals right now is looking for office volunteers. And but I think that it's a fairly easy thing right now because of COVID. It's not that busy, but when it does get busy, we really, really probably need some more volunteers. But anyway, I think Mike and Karen, and I have big admiration for them for following through and going through all the hoops. They were like dogs with a bone. They wouldn't let it go. And you just followed their little mission and went, wow, that that's something that I haven't seen a whole lot of. Some people just get so discouraged they drop it, but again, kudos to you guys.
Thank you. Are we up still?
Yes.
Oh, we're on? Okay. We had invited one of our riders, and she was going to actually show up in person. We were going to go get her and bring her to church this morning until we switched to Zoom, and then she agreed to do the Zoom. But this morning, she wasn't feeling very good. So she's not joining us, but she made the effort and sent an email to Justin, and Justin forwarded it to us, and Karen's going to read it.
And who was it? Danny that mentioned her. Mm-hmm. I wanted to say this is Carrie, and I think that Danny mentioned her as the dancer, performer, singer, and so forth. That's Carrie, and she her rides, she's amazing. She goes 3 places. She goes to HEB, she goes to the laundromat, and she goes to the library. Now, if that's not beautiful, I think that's, anyway, this is Carrie's statement for you. Good morning, everyone. I want to express my appreciation for Kerr Konnect, its creators, staff, and drivers. The respect and consideration shown to me by each individual, whether to plan my ride schedule through the office or taking me here and there, is top-notch. Reliable, friendly drivers, always interesting and interested in life, other folks, or me. Which brings me to my main point. The humanitarian aspect of Kerr Konnect is unquestionable. To facilitate an elderly, isolated individual in continuing an independent life lived in their own home. To be enabled to come and go, to do one's own laundry, to do research at the library, to see the produce and the people at HEB. These are the simple, sweet parts of life that being carless can deprive one of. Thanks to Kerr Konnect and folks like Mike and Karen, Lorraine, Dorothy, Fred, Debbie, Danny, Tom, Carolyn, Marion, Barbara, and all the other members of this indispensable team. Thanks to you all, I will be gardening and teaching music from my own home for a while longer.
That kind of sums it up. That's why we did this. That is an overlong presentation of Kerr Konnect this morning, but we thought we'd open it up to questions and try to address anything that y'all might wonder about.
I saw Susan's hand shoot up right away.
I don't have questions per se, but last year was an ordeal for me. I have someone that can drive me around, and that's my wonderful husband, James Boyles. But I spent a lot of time at Dr. Wee's office with about 15 surgeries. And he, as I was there, when I was through, I'd be waiting for James to come back and pick me up, and I would be sitting on the porch. And I met not just one, but several people who said, you know how I got here this morning? And I would, what do I find? I love to talk to people. And I said, Kerr Konnect. They told me about Kerr Konnect. And I said, well, I happen to know a little bit about Kerr Konnect, and isn't it wonderful? And they said yes, and that they were on boards at churches and said, we want to give money. They need help. Maybe they can get another part-time person with the money that we can donate from our church. So I just want you to know that Dr. Wee, that office is a place where you should have pamphlets, because my gosh, I met so many people there, and it's wonderful. And that's the last thing I wanted to say was, I said, well, what do you like so much about it? They said, it's the drivers. I mean, I get shuttled between different drivers, but they're all wonderful, absolutely wonderful. You can chat with them. They are just so great. So I just thought I would share with you what some of the people that you're helping say about you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions?
I've got Mari got her hand up. Give me just a second here. There you go.
Yeah, when I first came to Juniper Village, I asked the people at the desk if they knew about Kerr Konnect. And I was told that this is the Kerr Konnect is the only organization that they keep brochures on. They don't give out, I guess they don't help, maybe they help people with taxi numbers or something, but of course they have their own van, but they only take people to medical things. So it's I thought it was interesting that Kerr Konnect was the nonprofit, because you're a nonprofit and because they have such a good reputation. That's the organization that they're giving information out on.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm not sure we knew that.
All right, Carolyn, 1 second. Let me get you on there. Go ahead.
A couple little comments about it's also very educational to drive for Kerr Konnect. When I for the first 2 years I lived here out of 5, I knew Sidney Baker and I knew Junction Highway and my street, and that was about it, you know. And over the last couple 2-3 years, I have been all over this community and have learned so much. And one of the things that I've learned is that there's a great deal of poverty in this very prosperous community, and which was really enlightening, and the need is incredible. I was delivering food. The first time I delivered food was to this really kind of scary, actually, trailer in Ingram. And it was a lot of food because it was a big family. And I carried one box up, and with these little ragamuffin boys, 2 tiny little boys, peeking out from behind the blankets that covered the windows. And, you know, I kept bringing boxes of food up. And the last one I brought up had a package of dried cherries on top. And one little boy came bursting out of the door, and he grabbed the package and he held it to his chest and he said, oh goody, raisins, you know. And I just thought, I went back to the car and I sat there and cried. I mean, it was my first food delivery, and I just thought, have you ever heard a little tiny child say, oh goody, raisins, you know? And it was just you know, things like that happen all the time. And here's one of my rocks that I was given, inspirational rocks. And it says, it's a little faded now, and it says, when things get rocky, turn to the rock. And, you know, I look at this a lot, and I follow her advice. She's the cookie maker too. Anyway, I'm telling you, join us. It's so great.
June, you should have a prompt to unmute now, June.
Just real quickly, last week I picked up a lady to go to the grocery store, and when I brought her back, she said, you know, the cars on this street come flying over the hill really fast. Let me get out and help you. And it wasn't an easy driveway to get out of it. I said, well, you don't have to, but oh yes, I will. Except she stood right behind the car while she was flagging me out and looking back and forth. Every time I looked in the in either the side mirrors or the camera. There she was. I thought I could be the first driver to kill a client, but we did get along. We did get me out and in the right direction. But that was so funny. I've never had anything like that happen. They were out in the street. Okay.
Anybody else? Oh, Philip, let me see here. I saw you wave your hand.
Thank you. Well, I expected this morning that by hearing about this, I hoped and expected I'd have more of a sense of connection with y'all, and I have that. But more than that, I'm touched in a very gentle, calm way. And I feel connected to life. I've been reminded, all these journeys. Journey is such a great metaphor for life, are such a useful lens. And I'm reflecting on a lot of my life, and it's just like that. And we struggle, we're intellectual and try to talk about these important things, and once it's important, but just simple things that have been mentioned, being of service. That's when all these pieces come together. That's life. That's life. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a final hymn, I think.
Yes.
We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. The benediction is by John Mills-Powell and Sarah Mills-Powell. As we have been blessed, so we bless one another to be a blessing. Feel the love of the universe flowing through this community into you and out into the universe again. Let the love of all the universe, your love, flow outward to its height, its depth, its broad extent. You are more than you know and more beloved than you know. Take up what power is yours to create safe haven, to make of earth a heaven. Give hope to those you encounter that they may know safety from inner and outer harm, be happy and at peace, strong and healthy, caring and joyful. Be the blessing you already are. That is enough. Blessed be, amen. Sure. That's nice. Okay.